In this video, we're going to create a toggle with AppInventor. The toggle is something which goes the other way when activated. In other words, if a light is off and you toggle it, it goes on. If it's on and you toggle it, it goes off. If something is up and you toggle it, it goes down. You get the idea. This works this way. Here's the toggle for the on-off switch. At this point it's off. If I click it, it turns on. If it's on and I click it, it turns off. I'll show you how to do this. It's going to involve using the if-then-else control. We're going to create a new project named toggle. We're going to have a button on which we're going to put some images, and those images are going to be right there. Button off and button on. Okay. You can use appropriate icons or images for light bulbs going on and off. It's up to you. Now, I'm going to change this eventually, but what we're going to do is we're going to go to the block editor and we're going to initialize the screen. So when the screen starts up, when the application starts up, what we want is we want to put the image on the background to the off image. Oh, how do we do that? Well, what we're going to do is put the name of the image here. Now, I forgot what it was called, but what I will do is I will go back to the component designer and I will just copy this. I'm pressing Control-C to copy, and then in the blocks editor I'm going to paste the image so that when the screen is initialized, what should happen is that this is what we'll see. Okay, well, it looks like this hasn't happened, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to connect to the device, and it says already connected. Do I want to restart? And the answer is yes. I paused the video, turned it on, and we can see now that that's the first thing that we're going to see. We're going to see the off button. How do we get the change to the on button? Well, that's simple enough. We go into the blocks editor and we say that when the button is clicked, what we're going to do is we're going to take the button image, we're going to set it to the button on icon. That should work. Let's give it a shot. I may have to reset the connection. Oh, save. So, we look at the emulator, see if it works. Oh, great! But if I click the button again, what's going to happen? Why is that? Well, if you look at the instructions, it simply says if when the button is clicked, put it to the on image. Oh, so if it's on, it just stays on. How do we get it to go back and forth? Well, the question actually is, how do we know what state the button is in? Is it on or is it off? And the way we do that in computing is to store these values in a variable. In the built-in, we can define a variable. And I'm going to say, I'm going to give it a name called button is on. And we're going to set this initially to false. Here we go. False. Okay. And I probably want to initialize the same thing. So what I can do is, in my definitions now, I will see that button on is a variable, and I can set it to false. There you go. However, I have to take into account that I want to turn this back and forth between on and off. So here's how I'm going to do it. In the controls, there is an if-then-else statement. And under logic, I can test or look at the value of button is on. So what I'm going to do is say, well, let's see. If button is on is equal to false, I'm going to copy this and paste it here. What I want to do is display this. If the button on is true, what I really want to do is display that. All right? So once again, here's how it works. When I click the button, AppInventor is going to say, well, let's see, is button on? If that's false, change the image on the button to this one. If button on is true, change the image to this one. I'm going to reconnect with the emulator. Okay, we're ready to go. I click this, it turns on. I click it again, and I'm stuck again. The reason for this is simple. Here, what's happened is that I start with this being, with button is on as being false. It recognizes it's false, changes the image to on, but what is the value of button is on? It remains false. I haven't changed it. What I need to do is change the value of button is on to represent the actual state of the button. So if the button is on is false, I change the icon and I set button is on to true. If this is wrong, if this is not correct, which means button on is true, I'm going to turn the button off and set the value to reflect that by saying button on is false. It's saved, and we're going to reconnect to the device and see if that fixes the problem. Okay, ready? Now there's something else that I should show you here, and that's this. You can actually determine what the value is of the button is on by clicking on the, right-clicking, choose watch. At this point it says that button is on is false. When I click the button, you see the value changes to true. I click the button, changes to false. This technique, watching, allows me to see how my program is working. So I hope this helps illustrate how to use the if-then-else control.